Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamm Lee. Tears flowed and emotions were high as the queen of daytime radio talk in Hampton Roads said goodbye after 25 years on the air. Cathy Lewis is a Hampton Roads legend, the go-to source for civil conversation about issues that matter. And today on Another View, a first. The two of us together. Stay tuned for a great conversation with Cathy as she transitions to her third act. What's in store for this journalist, professional speaker, social media maven, talk show host, wife, and mom? Getting personal with Cathy Lewis. That's next on Another View, right after this national and local news break from NPR and WHRV News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamm Lee. I am so excited about our show today because I get the chance to pick the brain of the woman who got me started in radio. My entire career prior to coming to WHRO Public Media was in television news management. But because of my guest today, I came from leading behind the scenes to sitting in front of the mic. I've learned a lot from her as an ally and as a friend. Please welcome to Another View, the incomparable Ms. Cathy Lewis. Hey, Cathy.
Oh, my goodness. Now that I am on my own, I am hiring you as my publicist. That is going to happen. That was so lovely. Thank you so much. You are such a superstar in these conversations and in this time slot. And I just can't tell you how many times over the years I've heard people say, it's like eavesdropping on a conversation I might not otherwise be a part of. And I'm like, yes, and that's why we need that. And we need more of it. Yeah. So thank you for your kindness.
Oh, you're very welcome. So it's been 24 hours. You've been laying on the couch eating bonbons? What's up?
Of course. Absolutely. Because I think anytime you give up a gig, you're just lying around waiting for the next one to walk and knock on the door. Yes. No, I tell you something. I woke up this morning feeling very loved, and that was a great, beautiful thing. I am so touched, overwhelmed, and grateful for the lovely messages that have been coming in from my certainly from my colleagues, but also from people who've listened over the years, people I have never had the privilege of meeting, but for whom the show meant something. And, it's oh boy, that has just been, I told somebody yesterday, it was like attending your own funeral. So I told my daughter, I said, line up those very same speakers when I go and just add the hired mourners, which I do expect to be hired to stretch around the block. That was a colonial era thing they did.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. So there we go.
But really, my mother used to say all the time, give me my flowers while I can smell them. And you got your flowers yesterday.
I did.
Absolutely. So
literally and figuratively.
So I listened to the show yesterday. First of all, it was a wonderful, wonderful way to say farewell. You're not saying goodbye. You just said farewell.
Exactly.
And you're going to still be here with us and so forth. But you had a chance to thank a lot of people.
Yes.
This gives me the opportunity to thank you because when you were here at HRO when I first started back in, I guess, 2007 or 8 when Bert first came, and you needed someone to fill in on occasion when you had civic and so forth.
Oh my gosh,
you recommended me.
I
did.
And
I'm wondering why.
Oh, well, that was easy. Because you're a very affable, smart person. And really what you need to do this job is curiosity, the ability to roll with whatever happens. That sometimes something, it's lives, things happen. And I knew that anybody who had run a newsroom could absolutely do that with their eyes closed, with all the challenges there are in newsroom management. So yeah, that was a total no-brainer. Total no-brainer.
Well, I have to tell you this one thing that happened once that I remember, and when Taylor was on the show yesterday,
Yes.
when your former producer, one of your
Yes.
former producers, and one of the very first shows that I filled in for you, and we got to about 12:54 or so. So about 3 or 4 minutes left in the
Right.
show, and I literally said, "I have nothing else to talk about." And Taylor, her face was just like, "Oh my goodness, what in the world am I going to do now?" And she's waving her arms, going, "You can't say that. You can't say
do that."
And your audience,
Oh my
the
God.
wonderful HearSay audience, I looked at Taylor and I said, "Someone please call. Let's talk about whatever you want to talk about." And they called in. And you know what? I have
That's
never
so funny.
gone into a conversation on the air since. That was a learning lesson.
Oh, that is so funny.
Real
But
live and in person.
We are live and in person, and I love that you see what I love about that story is I know exactly what Taylor's face looks like when that happens. First of all, that's just a cherished memory. But the other thing I love about that story is when you ask for help, it was there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When you ask for, and that's what I have always found over the years is that people are very generous. I forget that from time to time in terms of asking for help and being able to receive it, but you know, that is the truth. We are a generous people, and so boy, I'll tell you, I have a separate but related story. One day you will remember this. This was probably 15 years ago, easily. But we kept having phone problems. It was right after Bert got here,
yes.
right? We kept having phone problems and couldn't. And
Every time you go to the phone would
every time
drop.
you go to the
Yep.
phone, and that's the worst thing. And if you're somebody who is in this business, you know two things you hate: dead air and when the tempo is interrupted.
Exactly.
And nothing like a dropped call will just bring it to a screeching halt. So it's just got so frustrating over time. And so at one point, the phones went out for the callers. The phone was out for the guest. And that was the day when I vamped for 20 full minutes. And I realized after that, okay, now I'm not going to tell you it was pretty. And I'm not going to tell you it was the greatest moment in broadcasting. I'm not going to tell you any of that. But I will say there were words. And I thought, after that, you know, I can, if something goes just dreadfully wrong, I think I can handle it. And what was great about it is I really mark that as a point in time where I got much more relaxed about this and realizing, as you did, you know, that when if you run into trouble, you ask for help and it's there. And I remember that as being a very clear point in my mind where I said, I'm just going to relax about all this.
Yeah,
it's
because
going to be okay.
People say all the time. When I was in TV news, they used to say about anchors. You know, oh, anybody can sit there and read the news.
Yes,
and when
yes.
they do talk show, oh, anybody can sit and talk for an hour. People don't realize all of the intricacies of what's
Yes.
going on, number one,
Right.
and the things that you have to do in order to keep the conversation entertaining and enlightening and all of that when everything is going wrong technically.
That is very true.
That is tough.
Let me just give your listeners a glimpse of what's going on for you right now, sitting in the chair. And this, I think, is the thing. A lot of people don't know. They think that, and why would they not think that? That's
Right.
what we're supposed to make it look like, right? That we are listening intently to every single word that comes out of the caller's or the guest's mouth. And would
Exactly.
that were true? But there are moments where you may have a producer trying to reach you to let you know, hey, next guest is there, or this guest has to go, or wrap it up, or we got to get to this point, whatever. So you're having to manage while you're talking, that level of communication. Sometimes I know this happens to you, it used to happen to me a lot, where people would make a statement that instinctively you thought, that doesn't sound right.
Exactly.
Right? But you don't know it's not right. And you don't want to say, no, my friend, that is not correct. So at the same time you're having the conversation, you're also kind of doing the Google machine to try to find out, is that right? Or,
Exactly.
or you're asking your producers, hey guys, can you just check this? That didn't sound right. And I think that's one thing that I wish people understood more of, that when people say a thing, we are in the moment.
Moments,
so
exactly.
unless we absolutely know it, we're not going to call it out until we have
verification,
the backup to
That's
be
right.
able to do
That's
that.
right.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
so.
one of the things though that I did learn from you, and one of the things I thought was just made you such a great talk show host is the fact that you knew when to let a moment breathe. And I'll tell you, when it happened for me, and this was well before I got on the radio. I was in the car one day. I don't remember what the topic was. I do remember the gentleman was a veteran, and his story was so compelling that, and I looked at the clock, and I knew, as a producer, I'm going, time and so forth and so
Yes.
on. But I'm saying to myself, Cathy, just let him breathe. Just let him go. And you did. And you just let him tell his story. And there were points where he became choked up and he was silent for, a second or so. And that's hard to do because we're always told, keep the air going, always have sound coming. But you just let him breathe. And it was so powerful. And that moment just sticks with me.
Wow, thank you so much for saying that. I can always tell when those moments are about to happen. I don't know if you have the same experience, but for me, it's a very visceral thing.
Yes.
Because you're right. It is a length of time that I'm not accustomed to, and the listener's not accustomed to, but I'm feeling it in my body. Just
Exactly.
keep your mouth closed. Keep your mouth closed. Let this go. Let's see where this goes. But you're right. It goes against every instinct you have to keep the conversation going. No question about it.
So who are your muses? Who inspired you in terms of talk show?
Well, now that I do not have a daily talk show, I can be more honest about these things. Not honest. I like to always be honest, but I can be more forthcoming. I'll put it that way. What inspired me was what I didn't want to be. So at the time we came on the air, the king of talk radio, and for many years after that, was Rush Limbaugh. He dominated the hour. I always like to say I went up against Rush and I lost, but okay, there you go. But Rush Limbaugh was really defining talk radio, and I didn't like the way he was defining it. I'd just be very candid about that. I did not think it was helpful to the Republic. I didn't think it was helpful to us as citizens to pit us against one another. I was just violently, irritated by the terminology that he would use, which was crass and base. And I wanted to be not that. I mean, so if you ask me who inspired me, I would say Rush Limbaugh, because I knew that's what I did not want to be. And I wanted to find out, because the conventional wisdom at the time, well, he had a huge audience and did for many years until his death. But, so the conventional wisdom was that's how you build an audience. You create that tension, you pit people against each other, you call them out, you bully them, you belittle them. And I just could not accept in my own, I knew that obviously it was working because it was successful, but I felt like without some alternative, then that's what people were going to think talk radio was all about. And I really felt like that was a grave disservice to the Republic and to our relationships with one another. I think it has, I know I've heard this, and I'm sure you have too, over the years, a lot of family dissension, because that is what was modeled as, sort of debate and the exchange of ideas. And it just doesn't have to be that way. And I think for me, I was really troubled by that. And so that was, I would say that really was the most inspiring thing. Look, if anybody, this, when people join this hour, you want them to find a safe space. You want them to find a comfortable conversation, especially on this show. You want them to be able to express something that they may have questions or concerns about that they are afraid or reluctant to express elsewhere, because you have the guests around the table and the expertise and the kindness to be able to recognize a naive offense and recognize what is much more than that.
And that is a major difference. And I tell you, it's very interesting. I feel for Dr. Barry Graham and others who answer the phones for us, because what we have found, especially in this last year or so through the pandemic, through our racial reckoning, so forth and so on, that people will call in and, there's a pre-screen where we ask you what is your question, so that we can figure out where it fits best in the flow of the conversation. And people will say one thing, and then they will get on the air and say something totally different.
Yeah, I've had that experience. I have had that experience from time to time, and oh my, that's that's very tough.
And so trying to maintain that respect, but at the same time, not allowing the vitriol to continue. That's a skill that we both have to do.
I'm struck by what you're saying. That's just hitting me really hard right now, because what I'm realizing is I didn't have that much of the topic switch scenario. And, that's very troubling to me that you have had that. And it's
almost
disappointing.
Lisa and I, the show producer, Lisa Godley, and I, we talk a lot about people basically trolling the show, because our show has a very specific mission, as you know. We make no bones about it. We discuss today's issues from an African American perspective, and there are people who disagree 100% with our perspective, and they have figured out that if they say one thing and we let them on, then they switch up and say something else. And there's been a couple of times where I've had to just end the conversation, because that's not what we're here for. Absolutely. So speaking of that, for 25 years, you've had an audience that has ebbed and waned, I'm sure, and grown and, and all of that. But what have you noticed, or have you noticed? Is there a difference in your audience today versus when you started versus the middle? What's the change?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, and it has very much to do with the word that you just used, which was trolls. In the beginning, in the beginning, we went on 1996. There wasn't any Facebook. I know that's hard to believe. There was a time where we didn't have Facebook, but it really did happen. So from 1996 till when was Facebook? 2004, 3, 4, something like that. So we had all those years where we didn't have Facebook. But we had letters. People would write you letters or call and leave you a message or whatever. And the letters were always unfailingly polite, even if they didn't agree with what you said. They'd say things like, "Hi, Cathy, I liked that show. I do wonder next time you talk about that topic if you would consider including this perspective or this speaker or this guest." And it was a very genteel time where you could take those seriously. And I wish I could convince people that the way you pose a thing like that has a lot to do with one's willingness to receive it.
Yes.
But then when Facebook started, then of course, it just started. And this is one thing I don't think people who staff organizations really fully understand the impact of social media in terms of the workflow of the producers, the people who do the show, the hosts. It is a tremendous, it's a great gift in a lot of ways, but it's also a time suck, and it's also something you have to kind of pay attention to. So then we got into the social media realm. Well, I would tell you, and I am very candid about this, in the last 5 years, what I have noticed is that if you get a complaint that you haven't done something that someone thinks you should have done, a complaint that you absolutely would have thought about previously and considered carefully, but when that complaint starts out with an assumption that there is a media conspiracy and that we've all had a convention to decide how we're going to do what we're going to do and who we're going to let on and who we're not, that's hard to take. And then the thing that I really noticed, and I've definitely noticed this over the last 5 years, but it has escalated in the last 2 or 3, is what I would describe as criticizing for the sake of criticizing. So there are these random and unspecified critiques. We used to get them on our show, oh, I see another left-wing conversation. Well, okay, what does that even mean? I mean, tell me specifically what leads you to that conclusion, and I'm happy to have a conversation about that. But when you start out with an attack on the show, an attack on me, an attack on the producers, it's a fundamental human circumstance that I do not know why you think that is going to help you achieve your goals.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I don't get that.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
It's like if they feel like they have this agency that they can just attack with no consequence.
No consequence, because there haven't been any consequences.
Right.
Candidly, there have not been any consequences. So that is, I have very strong feelings about that. it is something that I will no longer accept in my life because, I'm in a new phase of life here. I'm not accepting gratuitous attacks like that. I'm very happy to have conversations about ideas and people and thoughts and and all the rest of it. And if I mess up, man, I'm very happy to. Look, there's not a person in this town I haven't apologized to at one time or another. I am accustomed to screwing up, and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm very comfortable with that. But let's have the conversation, and let's not start with a broadside attack that is unspecific and just done for the meanness of it all.
Absolutely.
And that's been pent up for a while because that's something I haven't really felt like I could express, candidly. But I'm not tolerating that moving forward. I have found the block switch on the Facebook and the Twitters and all the rest of it, and I will be actively using it for people whose intent is just to either bash media generally without specifics or bash me personally. So
exactly.
That's it.
There you go. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. Do you have something you'd like to say to Cathy as she enters into her third act, and we're going to talk about what that is in just a little bit. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Do you ever dream that number?
Oh my God. Well, and every producer who's ever done the show knows this, that every once in a while I slip into the pledge numbers and it just goes out of my brain.
I do. I interchange. So if I'm doing pledge, I will do the radio show number and vice versa. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's
crazy.
Not like they're not posted all over the place for us to see. Like it's really, that's probably a little bit of hubris that we're not looking at those signs and, the triggers and saying, oh yes, that's the number for where I am right now. No, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely.
Oh gosh. So Cathy, I want to ask you, obviously with the pandemic, and then we had George Floyd happen, and many other instances as time has gone on. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us. And first of all, I said to myself this morning, I'm not going to say this because I'm always asked to be the spokesperson for all Black people.
Yes.
And so I'm not asking you to be the spokesperson for all white people, okay?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Let me just lay that out there.
Sure.
But how hard is it for white people in general, for white people to be allies during this time?
Yeah, that is such a great question, and it's really something I think many white people had the opportunity to wrestle with during the pandemic. That is to say, and I still, the George Floyd murder, and watching the trial and watching it over and over again, I think. And I'll probably get a complaint about this, but I think many white people saw that not for the first time, but because that was so egregious, because that man was obviously subdued, because there's a crowd of people of multiple races saying, please let that man up. They knew what was happening. And I think that was it was so egregious. I think that a lot of people who may have defaulted to the idea of, well, he was probably resisting or, whatever those sort of stances are, there was none of that left to fall back to. I mean, it was so
blatant.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that was a murder. There's just no question about it. I called it that from the beginning. I continue to call it that. I don't know how you can call it anything else. Does that mean that every cop in America is awful? Absolutely not. Yeah. I'm not a fan of this defund the police, sort of overall umbrella term, because like everything else in life, it's complex. We need police. We need good police, but we obviously have some bad actors there, and they need to be dealt with. And so I think I'm straying from the question, but I think that was so shocking for many white people. And then they started talking to others and hearing, oh, wait, you've had some experience that could have ended like that? Wow. And I think conversations started happening. And I think many white people, and I know I heard this. I have a number of friends who are black who've said to me, "What is it that they didn't know, that you all didn't know that this was going on before that?" And I don't have an answer for that except to say that was just that I think how do I say this? I think seeing George Floyd opened for those people who may have felt that way the possibility that, oh, this may be bigger than I thought. This may be deeper than I thought. And so, I think there's some very good conversations going on around that. What I often tell my friends who are white is, it is on you to explore that. It is on you to find out the history and understand it. Do not expect your black friends to educate you on this. You need to listen, close your mouth, open your ears, and just listen. And that's a thing I think is really important. So I will close my mouth and open my ears.
And I'm going to respond to that in just a moment. But if you're just joining us, we're talking about the third act with former host of HearSay with Cathy Lewis, Ms. Cathy Lewis, 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. It was interesting, Cathy, when that happened. Obviously, we got a lot of calls here at Another View, and I got a lot of letters, and I got a lot of emails of white people asking me, what do I do? How do I deal with this? And I finally went on the air and said, I need you all to give me some space because I had to process for myself what was happening. And before I can begin to try to help others come to grips with their own feelings. And I actually received a letter from someone who was angry because I didn't respond in the time frame that they felt I should have.
How dare you?
Because
that's sarcasm, by the way, you know that.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and people don't understand that instance had such a profound effect on everyone. And there needed to be space. You needed to let people, and I'm so glad you said it was not the responsibility of African Americans to teach, but that it was the responsibility of whites to go find. Is very different.
And I will say there's one thing, and I would appreciate your insight on this because, I in that moment, I heard that very same thing. Give me a hot second here to take all of this in, and some of the advice was, check in with your friends who are African American, or in the current moment, check in with your friends who are AAPI. And I think that's great advice. My question is exactly how to do that, because I would not want my checking in to be perceived as, oh, something's happened, so now you're checking in. So I want to be sensitive to that. Yeah. And I don't know, for the same reason we opened this conversation about, I don't want you to have to speak on behalf of everybody. I don't want to be in my check-in, trying to say, oh, well, you're a black person, so you obviously represent. You don't want it to come off that way at all. So how would we do that?
I think what you do is that you base it on the relationship that you had with the person prior to anything else happening. So you and I have had many conversations about many things. And so you calling me and saying, hey, Barb, are you okay? Is not unusual. It's because we have a relationship. Right. If you called, Joe Blow, who you have no relationship with or very little relationship with, and okay, even if you make the call, then just say, I'm just checking to see how you're doing. And if they don't want to respond, let it go. Let it go. Don't go into your angst about all the things that you're feeling. Yes. Let it go until the person is ready to accept it. Yeah. That just as you would do with anyone else, you would do that with your child. You would do that with your spouse. It's the same thing. You just want to give people enough space so that they can come to grips with their own feelings. And if it's someone you're
Yes.
close to, then handle it that way. If it's someone you're not, then, think about it in those terms.
I am so glad you said that because I think we do get anxious, and so we want to say to the person, well, here's how I'm feeling about it, and I want you to know that.
Right.
And what you're saying is back off that.
Just back off that a little bit and let, because truly, if you are really being an ally, you are really interested in how that person is doing. You're not you're not, you should not be interested in trying to unload your angst, guilt, whatever your emotions are at that moment. Now you guys can have a conversation later and really get into, how it made you feel, what was different, and so forth. But if you're checking in, especially when it's in the moment, just check in as a friend. Kathy, the phone lines are lit up, so I'm going to go to a couple of calls.
What have I said that has already ticked people off?
Caleb joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Caleb. You're in the air.
Hey, good afternoon. It's great to speak with you both. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Caleb.
Hey, I really loved what you mentioned with regards to social media and Facebook a few minutes ago. You're talking about just the anger and the hatefulness. And one thing that I noticed, and I would be interested to get your perspective on, when I was younger, I don't remember terms. Maybe they were there and I just wasn't aware, but I don't remember, radical, left-wing, liberal, or their, this very a very high level of intensity in the names, in the language that we use to describe one another. And honestly, sometimes this is coming from people whom I know and love, and I know that they're good people at heart, but this language that we've allowed to kind of come into existence concerns me a lot.
Okay, Caleb, let's give Kathy a chance to respond. And I want to ask listeners, too. We're going to try to get in as many calls as we can, so let's try to get right to it. Thank you for that call, Caleb. We appreciate
Caleb.
it.
And that was Barbara's very gentle cue to me to be brief with my answers, and she's a pro, and I appreciate that. Caleb, you didn't notice it before because it wasn't happening as much before, so your instinct is right on the money. This loading of language is intentional, and it's designed to divide us. And so I really applaud you for trying to look beyond that with the people that you know and love. One of the things I have said to people when people, sort of trot out that language is I will just put my hand up and say, we're not going to use those terms. We're not. This is you and me. We know each other. Let's leave those terms behind, and let's start talking about the ideas and the people and the issues that matter to us. So I think to the extent that you can call it out, because I think we have to start calling it out, and move it aside and get to the personal relationship, I think you'll start to see that change. At least I hope so.
And Kathy, you bring up a really good point too, because as we talk about this allyship conversation, the idea of being in a conversation and where people are being racist, call it out. That is one of the biggest things that people can do to try to change this conversation around, because if you let it slide, then people say, oh, well, it's still accepted.
Yes.
I can say, out front that I'm an ally. I do this and that.
Yes.
But if you let that slide, are you really? And it's hard. It is not easy. I get that.
No. And I will tell you, when you said that, my heart jumped up in my throat, because that is the biggest challenge that I face as somebody who wants to be an ally, right. Is I'm really good at calling out the language, and I can do all of that stuff. If somebody I love says something that I don't think they realize is racist, but I'm pretty sure is, I have to just confess, I get very flummoxed in those moments. So that's something I'm working on to try to be braver about engaging that and resting on what I hope is the comfort of a good relationship to at least have a conversation about it. And I think the other piece of that is you have to see that in yourself too.
Yes, absolutely.
That's the other thing.
There's a wonderful TED Talk by Melody Hobson where she talks about being colorblind or color brave. And
I love that.
I hope that
yes.
People will check that out, because it goes to the heart of that. Let's talk to Mark in Norfolk. Hi, Mark. You're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon. I just want to say thank you to Cathy Lewis for years of disciplined journalism, one, and then two, you're doing something that many people find very hard to do, and that is to leave at the top of your game and to make room for someone else.
Oh, gosh, Mark. Thank you. And I think
Mark.
I recognize your voice because I think you called HearSay as well. And always lovely calls. Thank you for that. You know, the decision about when to leave was really hard. It took a long time for me. You know, I think I said this in another essay on the podcast, but you know, I thought about this in 2020, and but you know, I thought about it in 2020. Then we had a presidential election. So I thought, well, I can't leave now. And then, right. So I decided I was going to go through, I'm sorry, 2016. I apologize. 2016. So I was going to go through 2020 because nothing else could happen. So I would just get through 2020. And then, of course, we had pandemic. We had social justice movement. We had an election that was, kindest way to say it is unprecedented. And we had, an attempted insurrection at the Capitol. So all of that stuff, I was like, first of all, I got to get out of here before something else happens or I'll be here another 4 years. But truly, Mark, no kidding about it. I so appreciate that because I really felt like after this year, there were things that I wanted to say that I could not say, and this is no disrespect to the format or to WHR. It just wasn't in my show the thing that I could do, and so I really felt personally that an urgency about that. And so thank you for your kind comments. I hope I didn't leave with people saying, when the heck is she going to go?
Well, we're going to talk about that. But, you know, Cathy, did you think that you and I are close to the same age?
Yes.
So, you know.
30, yes.
Yeah, exactly. We're both 30. We should be slowing down. And neither of us. Neither of us are slowing down, and we're both in new adventures. I mean, we're both now entrepreneurs. Yep. You know, did you ever imagine when you were 20 that in your post-50s that you would be starting all over again and starting something brand new?
No, and I'll tell you, the learning curve is steep and it's for real.
Yes.
And there's I must say, this is one thing I've discovered. I think later in life, you sort of gravitate to the things that you know how to do, which is why it was so easy to do the show all those years. I loved every minute of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, but and the learning curve is a real thing. But no, I didn't expect this, but I really felt like I needed to reorder things to hopefully to try to make a difference in some of these issues, because I'm very concerned about the fate of the Republic. I am very concerned that we are not taking some of these issues seriously enough. I am very concerned about the fact that we will very shortly be a majority minority country, and we have things we have not yet figured out about that. I feel, and I feel very concerned that we are, you know, the world is small at the end of the day, and we were not necessarily on board with everything that means.
Absolutely. Jillian joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Jillian. You're on the air.
Hi, thanks so much. I just wanted to say thank you, Cathy, for some wonderful shows that you've had over the years, from the head of the women's basketball team at ODU and talking about women's sports and what that does for women, from Jim saving my rose bush out in the back. I appreciate it. But sort of this topic that recently, very quickly, I realized you did a Thanksgiving show, and the show was how do you bring civility back into the conversation? And I was sharing with you that there's me and my sisters and all my brother-in-laws, and suddenly the turkey ends up on the floor, and my mother was crying, and there was chaos, and I said, just throw in a bottle of bourbon because that'll solve everything. So I really appreciate how you have brought civility into talking about very sensitive topics, and it's not about losing your cool. It's about listening, and it's about hearing. And I also hear it on Barbara's show, because sometimes the arguments I hear on Barbara's show, I go, oh, my gosh, she's got to be in there with a bullwhip, because there is just, oh, my gosh. But thank you, both of you, for bringing civility to a conversation in a hilarious way, in a sensitive way, and in a learning way. And I wish you, both of you, the best of luck for everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jillian. We appreciate that very, very
so
much.
Kind.
Absolutely. Let's go to Carrie Fury. Hello, Carrie. How are you?
Hey, you guys.
Hi.
I know better than to take up too much time, but this is magical. The two of you together. I hope you will both be frequent visitors on each other's platforms moving forward.
I would love that.
Absolutely.
I can commit to that.
I can too.
Because I'm in charge now of everything.
Let's do it.
So, all right.
It should be done. This is great. I just want to say I love you both. I feel everything you're saying. I hear everything you're saying. I've learned so much from both of you. Barbara, Another View was that tool that I used. In addition to talking to the Black friends that I already had, my number one tool was trying to run out of work by noon every Thursday to sit there with my mouth shut and just learn. Cathy, we've already talked about how much you mean to me. But I have to say I'm mad at you both because I was sitting on the couch eating bonbons. You telling me that's not what I'm supposed to be doing? Can I just...
No, I'll be right over.
For a week?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Carrie had her own farewell
absolutely
from a wonderful show. And I so appreciated your text, Carrie, because, Carrie understands, as I think not a lot of people do, how hard that is, how hard that departure day is. So I wanted to just say how much I appreciated that because it was hard. One thing I've discovered the older I get is that a good decision can sometimes still be hard to execute.
Absolutely.
But,
and she did a wonderful piece on me about Cathy, a group that both of us are a part of, which is the COVID Advisory Committee. And I so appreciated that before she left. Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie. Go back to those bonbons.
Absolutely.
I will. Plenty for everybody.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Let's talk to Sherry in Portsmouth. Hi, Sherry. You're on the air.
Hey. Hello, Barbara. Hello,
Hi.
Cathy.
Hi.
Hey there. Cathy, when you keep talking about what you're going to be doing next, I'm like, she's talking about working with Sherry Bailey in the Juneteenth Festival.
Well, I would love to do that.
Well, you absolutely are invited and welcome to do that. I look forward to it. Now that it's a state holiday, we got all sorts of opportunities to really make sure that people know about Virginia history as it pertains to how this republic started and how we can continue making it happen moving forward. And I know that you are a great champion of, that kind of work. And you, Barbara, with the work you've been doing with the race relations throughout the, past couple of years has been really important.
Thank
you,
Sherry.
We want to make sure that, we continue to have those conversations because as has been mentioned several times in the conversation, civility is something that we need to be able to pursue and make happen. And
absolutely.
I just wanted to say hello to you. I'm having a difficult day today. My 13-year-old puppy, Oscar, is making a transition. And
Sherry, we're so sorry.
I wanted to be able to say hello to you both and to wish you well.
Thank you. Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
And we wish you, the best.
Yes,
absolutely, Sherry.
Absolutely.
Thank
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sherry.
Sherry
That's so
Bailey,
kind.
she is an icon in the city of Portsmouth and throughout the state as she celebrates the Juneteenth celebration. I know it's going to be awesome this year. Definitely. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Anna joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Anna. You're in the air.
Hello. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I'd like to give Cathy the greatest compliment I can possibly think of. I'm a Norfolkian. I lived in D.C. for 25 years. I had a stroke. I couldn't keep my eyes on a paper, and I turned to radio. I found Diane Rehm.
Ah, sure.
Who I think was the greatest interview for federal and international issues ever. And I came back to Norfolk, and I found Cathy.
Yeah.
Cathy, you did the best Hampton Roads interviews and federal interviews. I mean, I just adore Diane Rehm, and I hope you realize what a compliment it is to be compared with her.
Well, I certainly do.
Because you two are fantastic.
Oh.
Anna, thank you so much. I certainly do recognize what a compliment that was. Diane Rehm, who's still working too, Barbara, not just you and me that are going to be working while we're in the nursing home. Diane Rehm is still doing it as well. But what a voice that she was for the entire capital region. So to be in that same company is a great treasure. So thank you very much, and I'm glad you've enjoyed the show over the years.
That is fantastic. I'm going to try to get in one more call because I know we're almost out of time. But
no, we're not.
Let's
I love
see.
not having to keep track of time.
How about
That's the best.
Lance joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Lance. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. Happy Thursday to you both.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you both. I'm a military retiree, and I've lived here now since 2010. I had an opportunity to volunteer with WHRV over the years on the board of, on the C, I think it's the community board.
Oh, yes.
Fantastic.
So I had a great time. And then lastly, I just want to tell Cathy, thank you for being my Twitter friend.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you so much. I really appreciate I love Twitter. By the way, it's a very different experience than Facebook. I think you probably know that. But it's like a Wild West and very interesting. And, so, yeah. And the one I can't figure out, though, is, I'm really trying hard. I'm going to have to, with this new thing, I'm going to have to figure it out, is Instagram. Like, I don't know how everything can be a picture.
Exactly.
I haven't figured, but this is an age issue. I recognize it. So I'm going to gather around me from some 20-year-olds and try to figure it out.
I actually got off Instagram because I kept being hacked. And I changed the passwords. I've done everything they told me to do, and I kept being hacked. So I just said, forget it. I'm not doing Instagram.
Yeah.
And there you go. Let's get one more in. TJ from Newport News. Hi, TJ. You're on the air.
Hi. I just wanted to say that Cathy helped me fulfill a personal dream, which is getting on NPR twice by calling into her show.
That's great. Well done. I'm glad.
But I also wanted to ask, as part of your transition, you talk about moving out of the way to let somebody else in.
Yes.
Perhaps the hardest step is just making the decision to do that.
Yeah.
But on top of that, are there any other things that you've done to kind of lay the groundwork for whoever comes next?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's really important. I feel like the biggest thing and best thing you can do is to gracefully turn loose of the thing. Do you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes people just stay too long. And I do a lot of work with younger people in the community, and my God, they are so bright and so capable, and they have such great ideas, which is not in generation bashing, because we all have, every generation has its role. But until we start moving aside to let some of these younger folks step forward, that's the thing I hear from them. They're waiting for that invitation. So, to create the availability is the first step in that process. So, and then I think the other thing that I had to do before I announced the decision is to try to get very comfortable with whatever came next. I'm not going to tell you I've been fully successful in that, and I don't know how I'm going to be on Tuesday. After the holiday on Monday.
Exactly.
And Tuesday I'm supposed to be at noon. That's what I'm supposed to do. So I don't know how that's going to be, but I have to just step forward at this point. So thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate it.
All right, Cathy, you got 20 seconds to tell people where to go for your podcast.
All right, CathyLewis.com. This is a website I reserved in 1991, did nothing with for 20 years, and then finally, now here it is. CathyLewis.com. You'll see a link that says, listen to the podcast, become a member. Right now, there is one piece of audio up there, which is a manifesto, which is sort of a furthering of this conversation about why this and what it is and what it isn't. And then beginning by the latest mid-June, there'll be weekly episodes up there. So if that's of interest to you, it'll drop down into your favorite podcast listening situation. I've got to get better with this terminology. I'm not good with it. But y'all who do podcasts know what I'm talking about. It'll drop down where you need it to. And it'll be a lot of similar conversations that we've had on HearSay over the years. I really feel strongly people have to know more about their local communities in order to make them better. So it's for people who want to do better and be better. There it is. Is that 20?
There you go.
It might have been a little over 20.
Cathy Lewis, thank you so very, very much for joining us. We cannot wait to see your next chapter. And you
Barbara,
take care.
Thank you. I love you. Take care.
All righty. Take care. It would start on May 31st, 1921 and last for 18 hours. During that time, the people who called Tulsa's Greenwood community home would witness the murders of friends and loved ones and their thriving, prosperous neighborhood reduced to ruins. It's been 100 years since the area known as Black Wall Street became the backdrop for the single worst incidents of racial violence in American history. Our Lisa Godley spoke with Dr. Eric LaVille about this very real and for so long overlooked piece of our country's past.
To this day, it's still uncertain what happened in the elevator of Tulsa's Drexel Building on May 30th, 1921. But we do know the incident involving 19-year-old Dick Rowland, an African-American shoe shiner, and 17-year-old Sarah Page, a white elevator operator, would set the stage for the worst case of racial violence in American history. Page says she was startled and therefore did not want to press charges. The result, Rowland being picked up at his Greenwood home and charged with assault. A white mob gathered at the courthouse seeking to lynch the teen, and the black men of Greenwood came out to help deputies protect him. This would eventually lead to a furious fight that wouldn't end until 300 Greenwood residents were dead and more than 1,000 homes and businesses looted and set on fire.
They were allowed to go in as private citizens and commit genocide upon that community, and that's exactly what they did. And Lisa, what took place after that was that they actually kept the surviving African Americans secluded, under gun and guard, while the bodies of the blacks who died, who were murdered, who were massacred, who were killed unjustly, and buried them in a mass grave, covered it up, and then they dared anyone to speak of it. If they did, and they would meet the same fate.
Dr. Eric Claville is director of the Center for African American Public Policy at Norfolk State University. He says what happened in Greenwood stemmed from much more than a single encounter in an elevator. He points to a deep-rooted jealousy because Greenwood, also known as the Black Wall Street, was thriving.
Because of segregation, because of Jim Crow, they couldn't operate freely outside of their community. So we had black teachers, we had black lawyers, we had black doctors, we had black insurance salesmen, black funeral home operators, black store owners, individuals who operated every type of store that you would need, just about, in order to survive during that time period. So Greenwood community thrived because that dollar continued to circulate throughout that community. So it was an economy unto itself, and it created a lot of prominence in that community as well, which of course became, in white circles that were not doing too well, a point of jealousy. They were looking for an excuse to act out their anger, act out their envy, their strife, act it out and inflict nothing less than murder, hurt, and pain upon people that did not deserve it.
It's been 100 years since the Tulsa Race Massacre, and for survivors like 107-year-old Viola Fletcher, who recently spoke of what she experienced to lawmakers on Capitol Hill, the memories are as vivid today as ever.
I will never forget the violence of the white mob when we left our home. I still see black men being shot, black bodies lying in the street. I still smell smoke and see fire. I still see black businesses being burned. I still hear airplanes flying overhead. I hear the screams. I have lived through the massacre every day. Our country may forget this history, but I cannot.
She talked with clarity. She talked with conciseness. She talked with conviction. And you heard the pain in her voice.
For years, the massacre was covered up. No one ever charged for the murders or the arson. Nothing reported in the papers. No federal, state, or local investigations. But things are changing. Researchers are looking for the mass graves, and survivors and descendants are seeking restitution. And some are hearing for the very first time about the horrific acts that took place in Tulsa's Greenwood community 100 years ago.
The reason why it's just being talked about again openly is because a lot of this history has been suppressed intentionally and purposefully to try to hide the terrible evil that was perpetrated upon African Americans by other white Americans. No one wants to tell the bad side of their story. Everybody talks about the good side of their family. Nobody wants to talk about the bad side of their family. But the story of America is just that. There's the good and there's the bad. We got to tell the whole story.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And to learn more about the Tulsa Race Massacre, be sure to tune in to WHRO TV 15 this Monday, May 31st at 9 for the powerful documentary Tulsa, the Fire and the Forgotten. That's Monday on TV 15 at 9 p.m. I'm Barbara Hamm Lee. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and we will see you next Thursday at noon for another view.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.